This conference will now be recorded.
All right, I'll start off by reading the declaration. Due to the nature of the declaration of a state of emergency due to the novel coronavirus or COVID-19 and pursuant to code 2.2-3708.2, this meeting is to be held by electronic communications via the web platform GoToMeeting. The catastrophic nature of this declared emergency makes it impractical and unsafe to assemble a quorum in a single location, and the purpose of this meeting is to discuss or transact the business statutorily required or necessary to continue operations of the public body. And with that, I'll call the June 7th meeting to order. Stacy, could you go ahead and do the roll call for us?
Sure. From Stafford County, Alex Oziak.
Here.
Brandon Brown.
Good morning, everyone.
Brian Council. Jason Towery. From Spotsylvania County, Paul Agnello.
Good morning.
Rodney White.
Good morning.
Jacob Pastwick. Leon Hughes. From the city of Fredericksburg, Jamie Jackson.
Here.
Bassam Amin. Mike Craig. From Vdot, Michelle Shropshire. Stephen Haynes.
Here.
Jim Ponticello. Dan Grinnell. From PRTC, Bob Schneider.
Here.
Joe Stainsby.
Yeah.
From King George County, Nick Miner. Kimberly Wilson.
Here.
From Fred, Aiden Quirk.
Here.
Craig Reed. From DRPT, Sierra Williams.
Morning.
Todd Horsley. From GW Ride Connect, Kate Gibson.
Here.
Lee Anderson.
Here.
From Caroline County, Mike Fincham. Craig Pennington.
Here.
From VRE, Christine Hoffner.
Here.
And from Federal Highway, Richard Duran. That concludes roll call, and we do have a quorum present.
All right, thank you, Stacy. I'll go ahead and move on to item number 3, which is approval of today's TAC agenda. Does anyone have any additions or deletions to the agenda?
Mr. Chair, we have one small change or two small changes that we would like to request. The Fred tip adjustment needs to be an action item, and also Vdot have asked us for a small tip adjustment. So if we could do those two together and have it as the Fred tip adjustment and Vdot tip adjustment, we'll handle them at the same time. And that needs to be an action item because we need to push it forward.
All right, I don't see any issue with that. Does anyone else have any additions or deletions? All right, well, hearing none, I guess I'll go ahead and make a motion then to approve the agenda as modified per Ian's comment, where we'll go ahead and combine kind of B and C together and make that an action item. All those in favor, say aye.
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 Are there any opposed? All right, then the agenda today is approved as modified. Next, we'll move on to item number 4. And let's see, what is that? That should be the approval of the TAC meeting minutes from May 3rd and May 10th.
Right.
So hopefully everyone's had a chance to review those minutes. Does anyone have any additions or deletions or edits to those meeting minutes? All right, well, hearing none, I'll go ahead and make a motion then to approve the minutes as written. All those in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, meeting minutes from the 3rd and the 10th are approved. Next, we'll move on to item number 5, which is review of the May 20th Policy Committee. Ian?
Thanks, Mr. Chair. As many of you attend the Policy Committee meeting, I don't typically go through this in detail, but just a very quick overview. The variable speed limits presentation was given by Marcy Parker from Vdot, and some discussion was held about that. The census letter to the letter to the Census Bureau was signed and was sent to the Census Bureau regarding the urban area changes to their policy. The letter to the Secretary for Transportation and Vdot at the Commonwealth Transportation Board meetings, we sent a letter to follow up on those meetings, just specifically highlighting the need for the additional lanes on the I-95 between exit 130 and exit 126, which was requested by the Policy Committee more than a year ago. We just followed up on it. Then the RFP, we just announced that we had to make an amendment to the RFP regarding DBE concerns, and we've made that amendment, and the RFP has been now published for proposals. The HIB funding allocation was approved as the TAC recommended without any changes. The CMAQ SDBG funding was approved, but we had to make 2 small adjustments, and those were for 2 small amounts that were remaining after existing projects that had to be allocated by the 1st of June, or we could stand to lose the funds. Vdot reminded us after the TAC meeting, the second TAC meeting, that we had to make some allocation, and there was only one project that could take the small amount, I think about $34,000, which was the VCR trail item. So we put the funds there. The other one, we effectively did a swap to just move the funds out to FY27 so that it could be dealt with at a later time. But we had to make some allocation, and the Policy Committee made those and then approved the CMAQ allocation as was approved by the TAC last meeting. The project priorities methodology for the LRTP was approved. Sorry, the prioritization methodology was approved. And then resolution 30, which was transportation project obligations, was approved. The TIP amendment for paratransit vehicles was approved, and the UPWP for the next financial year was also approved. So those are just the items. I don't usually belabor them because most of you attended the Policy Committee meeting anyway and saw most of that. Thanks, Mr. Chair.
All right, thanks, Ian, for that update. Does anyone have any questions for Ian before we move on? All right, well, hearing none, we'll go ahead and move on to the public comment period. Stacy, have we received any comments from the public?
No, we have not.
All right, is there anyone online right now from the public who'd like to make any comments? All right, again, hearing none, we'll go ahead and close the public comment and go ahead and move on to item number 7A, which is the 2050 LRTP update.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I will take this one as Adam Hagar is out today. You'll know that we have completed now the project prioritization methodology for the LRTP 2050 update, and we have now asked for jurisdictions to provide us with their initial just projects that they wish to be submitted for the 2050 LRTP. The submissions that we've asked from jurisdictions and partners need to be in by Friday, the 25th of June, which is what we're proposing is the cutoff time. And we are asking that the TAC agree to that deadline to put out the request for the call to projects. The LRTP webpage on the FAMPA website can be viewed, and there is a new candidate project form there. Jordan, if you can just show it to us. I think some of you, most of you already are aware of this. We're just reminding you that's what the form looks like, and we're asking you to complete it to give us the details that we need. Please remember to click save once you've completed your and submit, I beg your pardon, once you've completed your form and you filled in the project in all details. You can save it if you're halfway through and click submit when you're done, I believe. Also, we just want to remind you about submission of projected revenues. We have received some of the projected revenues. We have not received all of them. So please, if you've not submitted your projected revenues, we need those by the 11th of June. If you need to discuss any of those details around those figures, if you could set up a meeting with us, we will happily have an online or a meeting with you to help you sort out those projected revenues. Thank you. Mr. Chair, I don't believe that there's a further long presentation on this item. It's really just a discussion about the call for projects and reminding you to please submit your projected revenues so that we can proceed with the 2050 LRTP.
All right, thanks, Ian. Does anyone have any questions for Ian before we move on?
Yes, Alex, this is Paul from Spotsylvania. I do have some questions. If we can go to the candidate submission form, please. And I guess if you can just scroll down a little bit. So I guess I had a question like with the LRTP project status, if there's an existing project in the CLRP that is not changed, do we really need to resubmit it?
Actually, that's a very good question. I think the question is around, do we have all the details of that project? If we do, I think at this stage, just send myself and Adam an email saying that you already have submitted this project, and just give us kind of the name and detail of the project, and we can confirm that we have everything for that, just to make sure that we have actually included any details that we need there. So Paul, I would suggest that if it's a project that you're at all concerned about, fill in the form. If you think we have every detail, then just pop us an email so that we can just verify that we have all the detail. I don't want you to be in a situation where you believe that we have it and then it turns out that there's something that's missing. So please do communicate with us if you believe that we have everything and you don't need to submit the form. I'll just ask you to please do that so that we can double check. I don't want to be in a situation where something falls through the cracks because somebody thought they had sent it and they didn't, etc. I don't want to put anybody at a disadvantage.
Hey, Paul, this is also Jordan. There is logic created in the form. So if you click this button for the existing project, the only information that we request on the next page is any updated project finance and programming. And then that would be all you would have to do and click submit. You'd only have 2 pages. Whereas if you click any of the other ones in this section, you would go through the entire process and the entire form. So there's some logic built in to avoid filling out the entire form.
I also had a question just basically for projects that are not kind of existing, or they're kind of existing and have had some kind of change. I know the form basically on one of the later pages kind of asked for kind of detailed schedule information and kind of estimate by phase. And I know that this form, it's a lot more robust than what was used in the past. It seems like it's modeled after what was used for the I-395-95 commuter choice program. But I guess for like a lot of these future CORP projects, we really don't know much about the schedule. Like, let's say you want a intersection improvement in 2045. We're trying to have the exact PE start date and right-of-way start date and construction start date for that. I mean, it's kind of premature to do that. And I know there are kind of bands for this. So I guess my question is, do we need that level of detail for all these future projects? I know if it's like something kind of that's near term in the 6-year plan, it might make sense to kind of put that in. But for the future projects, it seems like that's kind of overkill.
Yeah, so I also can add that none of these fields are required. So you can skip any of the fields and still submit and move to the next section. So like you said, if it's scheduled for 2050 and there's no concrete deadlines or anything like that, you can, of course, skip the section. We can also talk about putting in a text box next to these and saying not known, or you would like construction to be in 2045, something like that. So we can work on editing this section of the form if needed.
And I know that the process also kind of asks for maps for kind of each project. And I say a lot of the projects are kind of already known. I mean, I guess I'm wondering, could the locality just have a meeting with the FAMPO staff to kind of talk through any questions about where the projects are located instead of kind of having us create maps for all these projects?
Jordan, do we actually need a map to do any research on each of the projects, or they indicate verbally or an indication of where the project's located? It depends on the methodology we're using. Jordan's more familiar with the detail than I am.
Yeah, so as long as you fill out, I think it's like the first page, it has information on the termini of the project, the to from that location. We don't necessarily need a map, an ArcGIS map or a QGIS map that has the exact location. And also if you put in the project description at the intersection of this road and this road, we are planning to have a meeting with the whoever submits projects and go through that we have the information that we need, and also that we know where the project is, we know what the project extent is, and just kind of to confirm all the details that were submitted. So we are planning on having some additional discussion with the applicants.
Oh, that sounds good. And I guess if we need a little bit more time than June 25th to complete this, is that possible?
How much more time do you think you might need, Paul?
I was thinking maybe a couple weeks.
We don't want to delay it too long, because we've already, as you know, delayed this LRTP quite a bit, and we would like to get the results over to Cambridge Systematics to start building out the models. So they can't really get onto building any models until we finish this process. I mean, obviously we don't want anybody to do a rush job and then regret it later, but I don't want to extend it too much beyond that date. I mean, if Mr. Chair, if you wanted to give applicants, say, an extra week, I mean, I would be happy with that, but I don't want to delay it too long, because, you know, we want Cambridge Systematics to get on with their part of this work as well.
Well, say, what if it was extended to Friday, July 2nd?
All right. I mean, Chairman, do you have any comment on this?
I guess, I don't know, would it be possible for us to kind of meet in the middle and maybe do like Friday the 25th?
That's what the week currently is, though.
It's currently Friday, June the 25th.
Okay.
So you know, Paul's asking for about a week. Is that right, to the 2nd?
Yes.
I mean, I don't have a major problem with a week. I just don't want to delay it too long, as I say, because there are other steps and other parties waiting on us for the information. But
and
a week.
One thing I guess I'll say is we're not planning to, if we do this, submit all our projects on Friday, July 2nd. We would be submitting probably a lot of ours before June 25th.
Sure.
just having all the projects done, it would be helpful if we had another week.
Mr. Chairman, I have no objection to an extra week, as long as it's just 1 week.
Okay, I don't have any objection either, so I guess let's go ahead and set the deadline then for Friday, July 2nd.
Thank you very much. Jordan, will you just make a note with Adam not here so that we don't have any problems with accepting submissions between June the 25th and July the 2nd?
Yeah, that sounds good. I have it written down.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
All right, well, I guess if there's no other discussion on that topic, we can move on to item 7B and C, which we've combined for the grouping the transportation improvement projects discussion. And I guess Susan from Vdot, will you be leading this?
I
We
guess I
can-
will.
Thanks.
Jordan, I can also.
Okay, it's up to you, Jordan. Do you want to run or you want me to run with it?
I'll start and then you can add anything that you feel like I left out. How about that?
That's perfectly fine.
Okay, sounds great. So we worked with Vdot to talk about different grouping discussion or grouping different projects in the TIP. So we got this request email, and the premise of grouping projects is to minimize the effort needed from staff and Vdot to update the projects, because if projects are grouped, they would not necessarily need to go through the amendment or modification process and get board approval or go out for any public comments. Projects will never be unfunded if they are grouped, but however, they could have funding timelines that shift outside of the TIP years. During the rollover process time period, there may be less projects that need to be involved in this update every 4 years, as the number of projects that are individually blocked are less, so there would be less projects that would need to be rolled over and have those adjustments made every 4 years when the TIP transfers. This is a flexible, efficient, and guarantees that the project would never be delayed based on the phases, since it would be grouped. And so here's the list of the projects from Vdot that were requested to be grouped. And then staff did some review, and we sent out the projects to each locality on May 20th and asked if they had any opinions or advice on what they thought would be good for grouping versus not grouping projects in their respective localities. We also looked at the VAMPO TIP preparation guidance, which is also created with Vdot, DRPT, FHWA, and FTA. And they included language with pros and cons for grouping, especially related to CMAQ and STBG funding. And they said that grouping projects is beneficial and can streamline. However, with these CMAQ STBG projects, it might not necessarily be the best to group them. And so we went through the list of projects, and we're trying to figure out what would be good to group and how would we group them. So we looked and said any project that doesn't have CMAQ STBG, that's a great candidate to group the project. If the project has previous year or FY22 CMAQ STBG, that can be grouped as well, as those fundings will be expended next fiscal year. We did not want to group projects that had any CMAQ STBG funding FY23 or beyond, and we did not want to group projects that were regionally significant. And so any of the adjustments that we're recommending can be carried out via administrative modification and don't need board approval. And so here's the final list of projects that we went through to look at whether they were grouped or not grouped and whether we recommend them. So the first thing we looked at again, this year funding for CMAQ STBG, and if it did, it wasn't really a factor that we could still potentially group it. If it had 23, it became a factor that we might not want to group it. And then finally, if it was regionally significant. So at the end, we had 4 projects that we considered that would be fine for grouping. And then we found 2 projects that we don't currently have in our TIP, which were in the first initial requested letter. And then all the other ones, we wouldn't suggest grouping. So I can take any questions, or Susan, if you have anything to add to that.
Susan, are you there?
Sorry, I thought I had hit that little button. No, I'm good with this. I mean, I'm just trying to make everybody's life easier and move forward a lot faster. That's simply what it comes down to. Because sometimes having to get these approvals can be a little tricky.
Hey, Jordan and Susan, this is Paul from Spotsylvania. With regards to UPC 107141 for the Route 620 reconstruction, can you just repeat what you said about the tip? Are you proposing to put that in the tip?
So they're currently not in the tip. However, that they were requested in the initial letter that they be grouped from Vdot, but we do not have them in our 21 to 24 tip. So I guess if Vdot would like us to include them, we'd have to do a modification or an amendment based on that, but currently they're not in our tip.
Does Vdot want that project to be in the tip?
Isn't that the one? I don't know. I don't think that one has to be in there, Paul. Isn't that a revenue sharing one that?
Yeah, and I guess if it doesn't have to be in the tip, I think leave it that way.
Okay, that's fine. It's perfect for me. And then Berea Church is, I want to say the same. Hold on.
Yeah, that's all revenue sharing.
Yeah, that's what I thought. So yeah, those two would be fine to leave out.
Okay, perfect.
So I guess I just had a question on the top one in Spotsylvania, the Route 3 operational improvements, the 113-172. So that project is revenue sharing, local and state funding. If that project is grouped, can Spotsylvania still basically get information on the project, like expenditures and other information from VDOT?
Yeah, grouping does not. All grouping does is put all the projects in one little category. So you have like one little category, and then you have all the different projects, and all the projects are separate underneath of that one category. All the funding is separated. Everything when we pay a bill, it's based upon totally the UPC number. So yeah, everything is separate in our systems. It's just for the federal type of thing, it is all under one umbrella. So that's the only thing it is. It's just all the numbers put up into one little line item. But if I want to individually look at each project, we can pull anything out for each individual project. We pay all of our bills, everything based upon the UPC, not upon the grouping.
Okay, thank you.
All right, hey, Ian, this is Alex. Did you want us to take a vote on each one of these tips separately versus the Vdot one and the Fred, or we want to kind of just group them all together?
Hey, Alex, if I interject, this one was not the one that we needed to combine with the Fred modification. This doesn't need any approval. This is just more informational, and if anybody had any questions about the grouping.
Okay, thanks for that clarification there, Jordan. So I guess I'll pose it back up to the group. Does anyone else have any further questions about this? All right, hearing none, I guess we'll go ahead and move on then to the Fred chip updates.
Yep, so again, Aiden, if you want to jump in or add anything, we have two different types of updates from Fred. We have an administrative modification that will need board approval. They're updating several of their STIP ID projects, and I've listed them out here, which projects they are, and how the funding will be adjusted in the fiscal years for each of these projects. None of them need air quality conformity as they fall under the transit category. And so this is the first update. Aiden, do you have any information on this one that you'd like to share additionally?
Yeah, just real quick. So basically, it's just for the group. So the draft STIP was out, and so we are just adding
one of our FY22 capital projects to the tip. That is the real estate acquisition around Fred Central. And the other modifications that Jordan is referring to is basically just adjusting the funding formula. So when we put these funds in the tip, DRPT was using a different funding formula than what we were awarded. So we are just making those changes to the allocation percentages.
And like Aidan mentioned, this is the other project information about it. This project will also need a public comment period since it will be a new project to the tip, and also does not need air quality conformity. So here's also information for that new project, as Aidan mentioned.
Alex, if we could take any questions and then show the Vdot tip adjustment item as well, and then if you could ask approval for both items together, that would be great.
Sure thing. Does anyone have any questions in regarding this Fred update Jordan recently went over? All right, well, hearing none, I think we're ready to move on to the next item then.
Perfect. So this is the Vdot administrative modification. So this is a new project, however, based on the scale and that it is a preliminary engineering, we do not need to have a public comment period for this project to be added since it's just a study. And it also doesn't need conformity because it's air quality conformity because it's a study, but we will get board approval to add this into the tip. So I can take any questions on this as well.
This is Paul. I just had a question. What wasn't at least part of this project already in the CLRP?
Yeah, I believe it was in the CLRP, but into the tip, I'm not exactly sure if this was already in the tip, but I know it doesn't need to have the public comment period.
Okay.
It's a study.
Yeah, it makes sense that it's being added to the tip. Thank you.
Yep.
Mr. Chair, these are largely administrative changes, but we do need to seek approval.
All right, well, if there's no other questions, do I hear a motion then to approve these two items?
A motion to approve from Spotsylvania from Paul.
Amy Jackson from the city, second.
All right, we've got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All right, hearing none, all those in favor, say aye.
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 Are there any opposed? All right, motion passes. Next, we'll move on to item 7D, which is the Smart Scale Round 5 update from Ian.
Thanks, Alex. As you all know, we're starting this process on purpose a little earlier this year to give more time for any mapping or engineering work or any other detailed technical work that needs to be done. The last cycle, it was a little rushed towards the end, and Vdot has asked that we try to start earlier so that there's more time to build in for all that kind of work. So we introduced the concept at our May meeting. We're now in June, so the second bullet on our snake of timelines, and we're now starting to develop a preliminary list. At this stage, the list is preliminary, so we're not asking for all the details. What we're asking for now is for jurisdictions and partners to develop just a list of projects, and we're just looking for, say, the name of the project and the location of the project so that we can start formulating lists. We don't need all of the details at this stage, but it'll give us a first snapshot as to, you know, how many projects are intended to be submitted and where those projects are in terms of location and so on. I know that Vdot has been corresponding with individual localities to make suggestions of projects, and we're asking now in June that our localities and partners come up with a list just with the name of the project and the location of the project so that we can begin preparing very preliminary lists, looking at our Smart Scale Round 5. Jordan, if you could just move on to the next slide. So we're beginning the process now of collecting a list of potential projects for both the FAMPO list and the GWRC list. Vdot has given you those priority 1 needs to spur your thinking as to what projects might be good projects for submission. The list of needs can be used by yourselves. Staff are available to help localities identify projects where needed. Please communicate with us. There are other resources you can use to look for potential projects: the 2045 LRTV project list, previous smart scale applications that did not receive funding, CMAC and RSDP projects, your local comprehensive or your local transportation plans. So, feel free to cast the net wide in your search for projects that you think would be good for this round of smart scale. Next slide. We're asking localities and applicants to submit a list, as I've indicated, by July the 16th. And also just identify for us projects you're considering for local or agency-specific projects that are not going to be on the FAMPO and GWRC list. It just gives us an idea of the full picture of what projects are going to be going in next year. And the July the 16th is the date we'd like to ask you. We need to put a date somewhere along the line so that we can get a cutoff of just the initial first blush submission of projects. Staff will then put together preliminary, I don't know what's wrong with me this morning, I keep pronouncing that word wrong. Anyway, the list of projects for presentation at the August TAC meeting, reminding our localities that the TAC and the policy committee meeting don't meet in July. So if you could, by July the 16th, email myself and Adam just the list of the title of your project and the location where the project will be located, on which street or whatever the case is. We would appreciate that. Then we can start putting some lists together. Mr. Chair, I'll take any questions. At this stage, we're not asking for any detail. It's just to get the process moving.
This is Christine. Mr. Chair, I have a question.
Yeah, certainly, go ahead.
Beery has not applied for Smart Scale in a couple years, so can you refresh my memory about the projects for FAMPO and GWRC consideration? What's the specific criteria, or which projects would need to be submitted for GWRC or FAMPO consideration?
We've got Stephen on the line here, who's probably the most familiar out of us with this process and has helped the FAMPO staff in the past. Stephen, would you like to just make a comment to help just clarify the detail of what's eligible and so on?
Sure. What I'd like you to do is give me a call offline and we can discuss this. What the best process for you to do would be take a look at the Vdot Smart Scale website, pull down the latest technical guide, and it'll spell out eligibility, the types of projects that are eligible and so on, with much greater detail than I can pull right off the top of my head at this time. But so that's a best starting point. And then again, if you have any questions, give me a call.
Okay, thank you.
Great. And when Adam's back at the office, he and I both are available later in the month if you want to give us a call as well. But Stephen's got a lot of useful resources, so please do, and what he suggested on the website.
Hey, good morning. This is Paul. I actually had some questions. If we could go to the first slide, please. Yeah, just this one. So I guess my question, and I completely appreciate the effort by kind of Vdot and FAMPO to try to get information at an earlier point in time. But I guess one of the things I guess we're struggling with is basically there's a requirement with Smart Scale to have kind of studies kind of supporting the projects, and we have some studies that are ongoing. Like in our case, we have the Lafayette Boulevard study, we have the Route 1 Masponic study. There are kind of two new pipeline studies, one for Route 3 and one for Route 1 in Spotsylvania that are supposed to generate some new projects. And basically, we're not going to have the results of these studies in June of 2021. So I guess I'm just trying to understand, like, we're being asked to come out with a list of projects, but we don't have the studies that are kind of developing those projects completed. So I guess I use the example of like the Lafayette Boulevard study. We might be interested in having another joint application with the city on some of the recommendations from that study. And we could have, you know, that, I guess, as a candidate project, but having any specifics about it, what exactly that means, it's kind of premature to do that in a June or July timeframe. So I guess can FAMPO or Vdot just explain kind of maybe how this might work if we get better information on these studies, let's say in September, and we have a more specific project at a later point in time, like let's say in the fall?
So from our side, I mean, we're quite happy for you to just list a potential project like that at this stage. You know, on Lafayette Boulevard, we anticipate a project to do X, but I'm aware that there's another stakeholder meeting of, for example, the Lafayette Boulevard study coming up, and that will have some further detail by the consultant as to what are recommended options. But Stephen, do you have any comment on that from your side?
Just that by this time next month, we should have a little bit more solid completion. At least, Paul, you'll be aware of all the recommendations, for example, on those two studies that you mentioned, and they should be to a level, I would think, that in your discussions at the county, you could kind of go through and go, okay, this looks like a likely you know, application, this doesn't, that type of thing. So I think we're probably within a month of having something there that you can take action on. Hopefully, again, it's the whole idea of a preliminary list, I think, that Ian's requesting here. You don't need details, and that does not tie you down to anything. You can change them later. So, you know, it's just working toward, you know, the August, September dates, and hoping that we have adequate data for you at that point. I would point out there is one other wild card that's kind of been thrown into this mix, and it particularly affects the FAMPO area. OIP has funding available and has authorized additional studies. Now, those additional studies is going to be really tough, to be honest, to get those completed in a time frame that you can actually use them for round 5. But that is the intent. And there are proposed studies that the 4 of our 5 proposed studies will affect the FAMPO localities directly. We've requested a study on Route 3 West. We've requested a study, and that would be in the city slightly, and then mostly in Spotsy. We've requested a study on Route 1 between Lassen Lane and Route 3, essentially. That entire section of Route 1 that is also an overlap of the city and the county. In Stafford County, we've requested North Stafford, north of Woodstock, on Route 1, another study. And then we've also requested a study at Centerport. So those 4 studies will be underway. Now, again, if you have ideas for applications that don't involve any of those, that's actually probably preferable at this time, as long as you're meeting a, you know, high level priority VTrans need. You know, we want you to try and target the highest priority needs that you have. And if there's any question about that, we can discuss that. I know we've had some of our locality days. Last week we held our Northern Neck residency ones. Today we're going to talk with our Saluda localities. Later on we'll be speaking with all the Fred Res localities. So the only one we've had that would apply to the GWRC region so far is King George. We've already had our locality meeting with them. But you know, once we've had all these discussions, we can get more down in the weeds. I don't want to go on too long about this, but we will be holding additional studies. But I'm assuming, like I think Paul indicated, that they have a pretty good idea what their list looks like already, and that's great. And the fact that VTrans needs, you know, are now prioritized, there are a whole lot more criteria, and if you have not taken the time to, and I'm sure you probably have, look at the, you know, that website that has all of that data. I'll be glad to walk you through it, talk you through it at any time. So, you know, I think we just have a whole lot of data, a whole lot of information, and it's going to continue to come in. but we need to look at it as, okay, how can we get round 5 ready? And maybe if we get additional data that we don't have time to process prior to round 5, we'll have some great stuff for round 6. And in addition to that, we also have had past studies, our STAR study, for example, in North Stafford, around Garrisonville Road on Route 1. We've got a lot of recommendations there that are top priority recommendations. Again, Spotsylvania, there are a number of recommendations and earlier studies that we've done and that the county's done. So there's got to be some flexibility in this, but we really do want to, in order to provide you the best assistance that we possibly can, help you get these projects screened in and scored well. We need to move them along on this schedule if possible.
Alex, with that in mind, might I suggest that we just encourage everybody to submit a full list, including potential projects that they're not 100% certain of at this stage. And if you look at the next item on the timeline in July, it says continue to work with applicants. So at this stage, all we're just looking for is a title and a location. In July, we will continue working with applicants to make changes. You may want to withdraw a project, etc., etc. So this is not going to be a completely hard cutoff, never able to make any changes. We're just asking for the name and the location. And please do include ones if you're not 100% sure of them, include them at this stage. In July, we will work with localities and with Vdot to refine that list and make the changes necessary. There's nothing in concrete at this stage, but we do want to start because we do need to make a start on the process.
And Ian, this is Paul again. I just had a question about the approval process, and maybe it's changing this time, but I'll say historically, it was the final applications that had to be approved by the MPO or GWC and localities, but even this process has kind of the pre-applications being approved. Is that the only approval that's going to be needed for Smart Scale, or basically is there going to be another approval later on after March 22nd? Or sorry, March 2022?
Paul, this is the first time I'm going through this. My understanding is that there will have to be a final approval, but I don't know whether Stephen has guidance on that.
Actually, I'm not even sure when you say approval, there's got to be a resolution of support that addresses each and every application, obviously by the MPO, PDC, and by the localities. So any other approval would be a FAMPO thing.
Okay.
This is Kate. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think what we're talking about is that the GWRC board needs to approve the list of projects submitted by GWRC, and the FAMPO policy committee needs to approve the list of projects submitted by FAMPO. I would think that there would need to be approval both at the pre-application stage and the final application stage, since it drops from 5 pre-applications to 4 final applications.
Yeah, Kate, I guess my question was basically, is approval required basically for the pre-applications? Historically, I think it was only required for the actual applications.
I think it would be good practice to have the GWRC board and the FAMPO policy committee kind of be the final decision maker, both for the pre-application submission and the full application submission.
And I guess, do we know what the schedule is for the full application submission?
Yes. August 1st.
August, did you say August the 1st, Stephen?
That's correct. That's the full application. But it's very important to point out, and let me take this opportunity. April 1st is the pre-app deadline. If you want to have a full application that you're going to submit in August, you have to have something at least preliminarily on April 1st for that project. In other words, you can't introduce any new projects, or you can't introduce major changes. Basically, from April 1 to August 1 is refinement and enhancement and discussion and those types of things. But you got to have your projects obviously selected prior to the April 1st deadline.
Great.
And
Paul, is
in
that on?
terms of just the November 2021 approval of the project list, this is just the regional projects for FAMPO and GWRC.
I would assume this is the FAMPA and GWRC process. So localities, separate direct applications, I don't think are involved in the FAMPA and GWRC approval process.
And the thought process with the November 2021 is just to give more time to, I guess, prepare the pre-applications before the portal opens up on March 1st.
Say that again, sorry.
Just kind of the proposed approval of the project list in November 2021, that's very early relative to prior rounds. I guess, I mean, the portal would open up on March 1st for the smart portal. I mean, that would be quite a ways before then. So I guess I was just wondering why it has to be so early.
That pushing everything earlier came from a request from Vdot because of the technical assistance that they have to continue to provide to get those projects into action-ready documents. So lots of additional technical work needs to be done by Vdot, and they've asked for additional time compared to last time, because last time apparently there was quite a rush at the end to get every detail done, and obviously with limited staff and resources, they found it difficult last time and have asked us to work earlier than normal. I don't know if Stephen has an additional comment to that.
No, Ian, you've stated it very well. I would just again emphasize that this schedule here will help us and help you to get your applications in the best shape possible. There's going to obviously be some flexibility in this. I'm sure there'll be a project, you know, maybe from Spotsylvania that's just going to take a little longer. But if there's just one that's taking a little longer, those other four, maybe we've gotten those, you know, ready for application sooner. So we don't look at this as a hard and fast kind of schedule as much as just guidelines to help us get ahead of the game. I know it's a lot, things are going to be stricter, to be honest with you, regarding project readiness, regarding VTrans needs, regarding the types of projects, you know, the different features that can be combined on projects. So the earlier we can get this out there, and perhaps, you know, if I can't answer the question, at least I can find the person that can. I can run this by our VTrans team sometimes. So those types of things are going to help us to help you be ready to put an application in on April 1st that's going to be successful. So that's really what this is about.
Thank you.
Great. So if there are no other questions, I'll hand it back to the chairman. As you can see, we're just trying to prepare everything a little earlier, and we won't be ridiculous about it. I mean, obviously there's some flexibility. We can work on that with jurisdictions and with our partners to just have a good process. And, you know, if there's some slight slippage in the timeline, it won't be a train smash because we've built in extra injury time into the process.
All right, well, if there's no more further questions regarding the Smart Scale update, I guess we can go ahead and move on to item 7E, which is the FAMPO Community Engagement Equity Plan. Stacy?
Yeah, so this was presented to TAC at the April meeting, as well as a more extensive presentation at last month's meeting. We're asking for your endorsement today of the plan. The policy committee will vote whether to actually approve or adopt, rather, the plan at their meeting later this month. I'm happy to take any questions on this. We concluded public comment period on Friday. We did not receive any public comments during the public comment period. However, if you'll recall, during the presentation last month, we did develop the plan with a great deal of public input through 4 different focus groups. So if there are any questions, I'm happy to take them now. If not, I do ask the chair to open this up for a vote to endorse the plan, and we will let policy committee know that TAC has endorsed it before they vote to formally adopt it.
All right, thanks, Stacy. Before we move on to any kind of motions, does anyone have any questions for Stacy? All right, well, hearing none, do I have a motion for approval?
Motion to approve.
All right, I'll second that. Is there any further discussion? All right, hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the Community Engagement Equity Plan is approved and we'll go to policy for their final approval. Next will be a discussion on item 7F on leased commuter parking. Kate?
Chair, just while Kate is getting ready, the initial leased parking spaces item at policy committee last month was not approved, and the policy committee did call for additional information on this item. Questions were asked and they wanted more information. So Kate just kindly produced a very good presentation today. Thanks, Kate.
Sure, thanks, Ian. So just wanted to kind of share with you all the draft PowerPoint that I've put together for the policy committee meeting in June this month. So the purpose is really to kind of give some background information to where this project came from and why we're recommending approval of this resolution. The first several slides are just kind of background on GWI Connect and TDM. Let's see, do you want to flip through them, Jordan? So then I'm talking about, kind of what the commuter parking program is. So, the background, actually, thank you to Lee, who tracked down the original Freelance Star article from 2009 about, kind of where the need for these spaces came from. That folks were told they could no longer park at the Walmart parking lot, and this was kind of seen as a stopgap until a permanent commuter lot could be built. Of course, that has not happened for various reasons, and so we've continued to lease spaces in these locations. Next slide. This just shows which of the spaces we're leasing are funded through CMAQ. The map here, I think, is really important. This shows why we're leasing the spaces where we do. So you can see kind of west of 95, we've got pretty good coverage from Vdot commuter lots. East of 95, we don't have commuter lots. So we lease spaces kind of as a supplement to that. And we follow the same basic model that these spaces are available for free to commuters who use them to meet up and then get into a van pool and share a ride to work. Next slide. And I think everyone's seen this at this point, but just the cost effectiveness of leasing versus building. And then I actually added the maintenance costs. We got that from Vdot maybe 6 months ago, but they're estimating that it costs them about $110 per space annually for maintenance. So we have maintenance built into our lease agreements that the owner is responsible for that. And then just some background on the FHWA guidance. We've talked a lot about the fact that this UPC is grandfathered in, and what does that really mean? So usually CMAQ projects have a 3-year time limitation, or I think that can be extended up to 5 years. But because of the time frame from these projects, there actually is no time limitation on this UPC. We can reduce and increase the number of spaces at the current locations, and as long as we maintain the UPC, we kind of maintain that grandfathered status, but we cannot lease more than 105 spaces, which is the that was the maximum number that we had under this UPC. And then, if we were to lose this UPC and have a new UPC in the future, that would fall under the 3-year time limitation. And then here's just an overall budget. So these 3 spaces are funded through CMAQ dollars, which is a combination of federal CMAQ money and then the state match. There's no local dollars going towards this project. And you can see the total cost for a year for 65 spaces is just under $17,000. As far as average utilization, obviously utilization has dropped off during COVID. So prior to COVID, we were around 50 to 60% utilization at all of the locations. Post-COVID, we've been much lower. Let's see, 6 to 20%, and those are averages during those times. We do conduct utilization counts twice a month. And so those are our current numbers. So just a few things looking forward. We are hoping that, very soon we are going to start seeing a ramp up in the post-COVID return to van pooling. We actually, I think, are already starting to see this. We've been getting some calls from folks who are interested in, restarting van pools and carpools. So, we're kind of hoping that if we keep the lease spaces in place right now, that folks will start returning and start utilizing those spaces again, kind of back to the pre-COVID levels. We are hoping to launch a new ride matching app in partnership with the state. So that should be coming within the next few months or so. And that's going to be really exciting and make it a lot easier for folks to find carpools and van pools to join. And then also kind of looking even further ahead, we've been talking with Spotsylvania County about leasing parking spaces for Fred Transit service that was funded through Smart Scale Round 4. So that wouldn't start until FY27. But we are looking at utilizing 75 spaces that are funded through the UPC we're talking about here, and then an additional 85 spaces through a new UPC. And we put in a joint application with Spotsylvania County for that to be funded in FY27. And I think that's the whole presentation. So just wanted to kind of show you all what we're planning to present to kind of frame the conversation and give the policy committee a little bit more information about this project so that they can make a decision about whether or not to fund it. Happy to take any questions or comments from anybody.
Mr. Chair, this is Jamie Jackson. I have a couple of questions.
Sure, go ahead.
So for this particular effort, was a Title VI analysis performed and or can it be performed just so that the board has that information? Because usually with projects that we know have a finite end date for CMAQ RSCP, we may say that it's a demonstration period. Since this has gone longer than a year or two, I think it may be beneficial to note the impacts of reducing these spots versus the Vdot spots, and or just alone, because you usually wouldn't compare it for a Title VI analysis. But I think this is something that should be looked at before this project is dissolved, just so that you don't have any issues, civil rights issues, since you're just continuing a long-standing project.
Yeah, and I can just say I don't, to my knowledge, that's not been done. So we can definitely look into that, and maybe Jamie will follow up with questions about what that looks like, because I have not been involved in one of those. So
Sure. Yeah, let me know if you have any questions, but I would just use your Title VI policy for adding or reducing anything. I'm sure it's probably within 3/4 of a mile. So I think that would be helpful, because if your population's impacts are either minority and or low income, and they're within that area, within that area, you may have a bigger problem once you eliminate the service completely. And that's one of the thoughts that I had at our previous meeting. Then the only other item I had a question on is before that, I know that they voted to not move forward, and I'm not sure if this meeting is to offer them another opportunity to vote. But if we have not done any sort of outreach, I think we should, by those who may be potentially affected. So notice is posted, et cetera, in that area, because if we're trying to do that outreach that they've asked you to do, I mean, we've got the community engagement and equity plan that's on the table. I think this will be a good opportunity to use that to notify those 50 to 60 commuters that are using that space now that it's going away, so that they've got an opportunity to provide feedback to the board. So those are my 2 comments.
Yeah, we can definitely do that. So thank you.
Hey, Kata, this is Paul from Spotsylvania. I'll say that the discussion of the policy committee on this was unfortunate. I guess a thought that I had is maybe you could propose some kind of modest reduction just due to the lingering effects of COVID, maybe to address some of the policy committee concerns. So I'll say that basically if there's just $1 in CMAQ that basically is put on this project for next fiscal year, it could kind of live to fight another day when kind of COVID is over and the van pools and carpools come back.
Yeah, thank you for that suggestion. I mean, part of it, I think, is where we left off with TAC, is that TAC has endorsed the resolution, right? But I think it's a good discussion point for this group if people are comfortable with us, kind of proposing something like that, which kind of gets us through the next year, but maybe at a reduced amount. Not knowing exactly. It's hard because we don't know exactly how many folks are going to, need those lots within the next year, but we could certainly propose some sort of a middle ground where we reduce the spaces but still continue the UPC.
Hey, Kate, I know the COVID restrictions were just kind of lifted, but has there been any indication in the last few weeks that more people are using the spaces?
The data in the PowerPoint is from, I think, last week, as current as last week. So it doesn't look like there's been any kind of uptick yet. That's not to say that there won't be. I know I just was looking at our numbers from last month, and we've had a new van pool form and a new carpool form, versus we've been kind of consistently removing them. So I think it's starting to come back, but maybe not quite yet.
I guess like with the federal government, are they still kind of doing kind of most employees teleworking, or are they having some of their staff come back?
I think it depends. I have a lot of friends that work at Dahlgren, and I think they're still teleworking, but looking, maybe sometime this month at bringing folks back. I know they are talking about, kind of more telework being available, or some people even teleworking more than 60% of their time and then not having a dedicated workspace. And I think that point was raised at the policy committee meeting. On the other side, there are a lot of folks that work on classified work that can't be done remotely. So I think, the federal agencies are still kind of working out what that looks like. But I think they're starting to make moves towards bringing people back, is kind of my understanding.
Hey,
Thank you.
This is Jamie. I think I'm in agreement with Paul, and I'll defer to the committee and of course the chair, but I think it would be a great opportunity if we could at least extend this discussion for at least another year. And I'll say my justification on reason why, and some of which is anecdotal, but I do have friends that are in that space as well, and they have been pushed back from July to August for a return to work. So I don't think that we know exactly what people are going to do. I think in the FAMPO board meeting, there was discussion about more people being able to telework and how frequent that would be. And I think honestly that just depends on your position, and I think we'll see kind of changing dynamics in the next few months, and I think y'all need time to evaluate that. I would say we're still in that cyclical nature of we don't know when gas soon as gas prices hit high again, we're not going to have the opportunity to use this UPC. So even if we scale back now, I think trying to keep it is critical. And then the last anecdotal item I'll say is I think sometimes we look at these concepts from kind of behind our desk as people who get to telework. And again, telework is a luxury for those who can either afford it or whose options in their workplace to allow them to do so. There was just an article, and I believe, I can't remember which paper it was, but of course it can be Googled, talking about workers on the Hill making $32,000 living in DC. And so, you have to either bunk with somebody or work remote, commute. So I think as those folks and people like them, not just those who are, capital staffers, get back to work, if we want to be a region that allows people to actually live in a reasonably priced area, we're going to have to provide options for them to do so. So looking at today is great until tomorrow comes. And I think for our leadership, again, the people that we are probably talking to are probably in positions that are higher level like ours, that can have the options to work remotely and are not the average Joe that's using those parking ride spaces. You can look at the cars and tell who are riding. Who are using this commuter lot option, potentially, even though I drive an older car, but I'm just saying. So I think, again, long story short, I agree with Paul. I think either scaling down or at least providing another year. VRE ridership just got back in place, and that's taking a while. It's going to take a while. We haven't extended our commuter service yet just because VRE ridership numbers aren't up. And we just need time to see what people do. And I think we're terminating it early without giving it a little bit more time for me is probably not the best course of action if we want people to actually live in this region.
Mr. Chair, this is Stacy. I've been asked to follow up on Jamie's comment about Title VI analysis and the community outreach for this. Is it okay if I say something?
Yes, please.
Sure. So just to clarify, so the GW Ride Connect program isn't tied at all to FAMPO public outreach or Title VI work. So the community engagement equity plan that you just voted to endorse, it does not apply at all to GW Ride Connect. You'd have to ask them about their outreach work. I know they do that and what their plan would be for this, but I just want to make it clear that this wouldn't be a FAMPO Title VI or community engagement product, and that the community engagement plan does not apply to GW Ride Connect.
Thanks, Stacey. I would just say, to piggyback on that, I think it would be more important that it's done through GWRC, since they're primarily the dollar holders, even though policy and planning decisions come out of FAMPO, but we're actually talking about public dollars that are going to receive federal support here through this process. So I think you may have to do that Title VI analysis. I can't say for sure, but somebody has to do it because I think you do. So that would just be my comment. If there isn't a plan in place, there needs to be some mechanism for the public to have a decision for their dollars and or you identify, not you, but identify the impact. So, okay.
Yeah, we can definitely look into that. And I think, overall I hear your point, Jamie. I think it's a good one that we want to make sure, discontinuing this would not negatively impact, certain populations, and have the policy committee make that decision without taking that into account. So just to kind of bring it back to the discussion, I'm thinking maybe of adding a slide to the end that kind of proposes maybe a reduced allocation, if that is amenable to the TAC, which it sounds like it is, unless anyone has major concerns with that approach.
Hey, Kata, this is Paul. I think that makes sense. I'm not sure how much of a reduction would be needed maybe to get support policy, but I guess my initial thought would be 25%. But I mean, if you have a different thought, that's fine.
Yeah, I mean, one thought, I'm looking at the average utilization data slide, Jordan, if you want to go back to that one, we could reduce it so that, our prior to COVID averages are at a certain utilization rate, like 80 or 90%, for example. So I could run those numbers and see where that puts us. I would think that that's probably around that 25% cut number as well. So that might kind of give us a good, methodology for picking a number, unless anybody else has any thoughts on that.
This is Alex. I was kind of thinking the same things along the lines of maybe like, a 25% reduction to what we're currently funding for spaces. And then I know the policy committee had also brought up questions about whether, there could be any kind of cost sharing for these spaces, either with the individual commuters or the van pools or something like that. Have you looked into any of that by chance?
We haven't looked into that. I mean, my argument against that would be that this is really to supplement Vdot commuter lots, and we don't charge people to park at Vdot commuter lots. So, that would kind of be my reasoning for not going that path. But, certainly happy to take any suggestions from anybody on TAC about that.
Yeah, I don't really have any concrete suggestions. I know just a couple members of policy had raised a question about possible parking stickers or something like that, since we're paying for this service for them not to have to park in the commuter lots.
Yeah, I guess the point that I should make when I give the presentation is that, folks will not travel backwards to park at a commuter lot and then drive the opposite direction to work. So, I mean, I think the purpose of having these spaces is to encourage people to share a ride. And so, GW Ride Connect kind of helps with all of the pieces along the way, but one of the pieces to encouraging people to share a ride is that they have to have a place to meet and park. And so I think the alternative to not having these spaces is just fewer people are going to share rides, which, the broader impact of our program is to keep cars off the road, which helps with congestion and then also helps with cost savings of, not having to add lanes to highways, but also, wear and tear. So, so I don't know how to put this into the bigger picture, but I mean, I very much understand where they're coming from, but on the other hand, it's more expensive to build a commuter lot, and we don't charge people to park at those lots. So I don't know if anyone has suggestions on, what that looks like, but that would kind of be my argument.
I mean, I would just, say this generally for commuter lots. This is Jamie again, and staff talking. But if we have free parking spaces in our jurisdictions or free parking decks in our jurisdictions, this is the same concept. So we encourage these parking decks and parking spaces in public places so people can access our businesses and or get to where they need to go. So to have a program that is actually literally focused on getting people out of the cars and sharing spaces, and saying let's charge for that, to me doesn't make sense against when we have spaces that we don't charge for in our jurisdiction just so people can come to our location. For me, it's kind of the same concept. I know that's not the same for everybody, but I would just say if we're looking at it in context, when we do expansions on 64 that are non-full lanes, we don't require people to pay. So I think this is the same thing. Yeah, we don't require people to pay for a public good.
I did just do the math really quickly. So if we do a 25% reduction, that would be 15 spaces at Chatham instead of 20, 8 spaces at Claiborne instead of 10, and then 26 spaces at the Field House instead of 35. And then if you look at those pre-COVID utilization numbers or average utilization, our utilization at those reduced spaces would be, if we can get back to those numbers, 80%, 62%, and 75%, which I think makes sense. And then the other thing with the 62% at Claiborne Run, we probably don't want to drop below 8 spaces, because then you kind of aren't able to serve. I would think 8 spaces you could probably serve 2 van pools, maybe not quite 2, but it just depends on how many riders they have. Anyways, so if everybody's okay with the 25% reduction, I think we could probably move forward with that.
This is Paul. I'll make a motion that we approve kind of the reduction at 25% as Kate has described.
Amy Jackson, second.
All right, we've got a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion on the topic? All right, all those in favor of the 25% space reduction, say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? All right, well, Kate, I think you got some input there, and good luck at policy committee.
Thank you all, appreciate it.
All right, we'll go ahead and move on to item, what was it, 7G, which is the FAMPO mobility survey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If it's all right with you, I'd like to take the next 3 items together in view of the fact that I'm presenting all 3, and then I'll happily take questions on all 3 of them afterwards, if that's acceptable.
Yeah, sure. I think that works for everyone.
Great. Jordan, if you could just pull up the mobility survey slide.
It's lagging, but it's slowly trying to scroll down.
Great, no problem. So we have launched the new transportation improvement survey, we've called it, really just to get input from the public as to how they feel about getting to work, getting to school, college, getting to volunteer jobs and so on, to try and understand questions around accessibility and congestion and so on. One of the questions, for example, asked, where do you find it difficult to access from your home? We'd like to use that information to inform all of our studies at FAMPO, whether it's the long range transportation plan, or whether it's the East-West mobility study, or whether it's future projects that we work on. It's giving us data points. And what's a little different this time around is that the survey asks you approximately to indicate your home location and approximately to indicate your work location, which allows us to analyze responses based on location. So we can look at which people find it difficult to access transit and where do they live. And that would tell us where there is kind of limitations in the transit system. Also, people who are driving their cars, where do they find it difficult to access? That tells us something about the roadway network and so on. Also asking about ticket prices. How do the public feel about ticket prices for VRE and for transit buses and so on? And all of that information, because we're doing it by locality, by location, you can map the responses, say in ArcGIS, and give people useful information that they can use. Even our localities can use the data to think through their comprehensive plans and their transportation plans and so on. So what we're just asking everybody at the TAC to do is to please continue to help us getting the word out to members of the public in your jurisdictions, asking people just to take the survey. We are getting quite a lot of responses. There's a slight bias in the responses. We're getting more responses from people who work in Northern Virginia and DC rather than people who work locally. And so we'd like to find more people who work locally in Spotsylvania, in Stafford, and in Fredericksburg to take the survey, so we can just get a couple more responses from them. But it's really been a great survey. We're getting far more responses than FAMPO got in the last 2 surveys. So we think it's a good survey. As you know, all surveys have weaknesses because you can't ask everything, because unfortunately the public only has so much time on their hands to take your survey. So you have to, each survey, try to do something a little different from the last time so that you get different information. And hopefully over time you build up a picture of the public views about transportation and planning and so on. So we just, all that we're asking today is to encourage you to put the word out to people in your local community to please take the survey. The links are all in the material there for you to see. Stacey's been doing a great job of marketing the survey. Then if we can switch, Jordan, to the year in review slides. Really, this is just a fun item just to say where have we been. Today is our last meeting in FY21 and we're closing out the year. I was not here for the first half of FY21, but I'd like to just propose these very few slides just to remind ourselves and highlight some of the things we've done. It's our last TAC meeting of FY21 and it gives us this opportunity to review. During the year, the FAMPO Policy Committee has already approved 31 resolutions to date. There are 2, maybe 3 on the agenda for the next Policy Committee meeting, depending on you know, what the chairpersons and so on want on the agenda. But that would take us to around 33 or 34 resolutions for the year that were approved. Significant projects, well, you know, we did various iterations of the TPB MOU, which has now been finalized, and the chairperson is signing it and then it's done. We have made some other progress. The 2050 LRTP for the rural areas has been completed, full project completed. The 2050 LRTP for FAMPO, we've done the project prioritization methodology and initial modeling, and the prioritization methodology has been accepted by the policy committee. The grant application and awards for the FAMPO East-West Mobility Study, the various items there that have been done, and we look forward to beginning that project in the future. Next slide. Staff efforts, as usual, the staff did the UPWP for FY22. We provided planning assistance to local governments, administrative assistance and operational support to all of our FAMPO committees. We worked with the CTP, with Vdot regarding funding applications and funding allocations of the various funding streams that have come through to us and to our jurisdictions. We've continued utilizing platforms such as Streetlight, INRIX and so on data to get more details for a lot of the work that we're doing. We continue to develop our GIS capabilities in-house. Next slide. Long and short range planning. We've maintained and amended the 2045 LRTP. We continue to work on the 2050 LRTP. We've amended and maintained the TIP. We've adopted and implemented the new TIP 21 to 24 TIP. Smart scale round 4 applications and the funding results, over 100 million in new funding coming to the region. We've commenced the smart scale round 5 process. Next slide. Public involvement. We completed the Title VI audit with no corrective actions. We got a great letter stating that we'd done a very well-rounded job. We increased information, sharing information via our distribution database. We've improved the FAMPO website and increased our social media presence. I think Stacey's been doing a good job of that. Major public involvement efforts, the 2050 LRTP, a previous survey we did, the 21-24 TIP, the 22 UPWP, air quality conformity analysis, 2045 LRTP amendments, and commenced the FAMPO Transportation Improvement Survey, which we've just spoken about. Next slide. Rural transportation planning, the approval of the Bowling Green Small Area Plan, which led to Smart Scale Round 4, well, a Smart Scale Round 4 project. Approval of the Rural LRTP. We've created the FY22 Rural Work Program, working with the jurisdictions. The King George Transit Feasibility Study is currently in progress, It's not complete yet, but it's very close to the end now. The Ladysmith Bike Ped small area plan is also in progress, and the Greenway feasibility study, which is being done for our rural localities and urban localities, but via a Virginia Department of Forestry grant. Next slide. Continuing projects, the 2050 LRTP, as you know, the Lafayette Boulevard Multimodal Study Phase 2, although we hope that that is completed quite soon. We have put out the RFP now, and we're looking at the selection of new on-call consultants once we get applications coming in. New projects, the Interregional Multimodal East-West Mobility Study, both phases. We are going to do a new CMAQ STBG prioritization methodology. I think we all acknowledge that the current one is a little dated and needs some work, and Smart Scale Round 5. Those are those slides for that. And then just in terms of the schedule update, there's nothing new here really. Just we want to just remind everybody that there won't be another TAC meeting in July, but there will be a TAC meeting in August, as our committees all voted to have July as the summer break, and August will be a work month. So we will have a TAC meeting in August. Chairman, that is the 3 items together. Happily take some questions if anybody has any. In the interest of time, I just thought I should put them all together.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman and Ian, this Paul from Spotsylvania, I had a couple questions. One is basically with the Lafayette Boulevard study, has a date been set for the next meeting for that? The second question is with regards to the next TAC meeting date, could we possibly move that to August the 9th? Because I have a scheduled vacation basically where I will be away on August the 2nd.
Just let's have a look what the date is for the policy committee meeting in August.
Only on the 16th.
16th. We should be able to do that. That'll just be a very busy time for staff, but I'm sure we can try and work around that. No formal objection. Paul, just to your first item, I just want to remind everyone that the Lafayette Phase 2 study is being managed by Vdot, not by FAMPO staff. So perhaps we should just ask Vdot if they could tell us the answer to Paul's question.
Yeah, this is Stephen. I do not have that date, but we should have it very shortly. And of course, you'll be the first to know.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
This is Jamie, and I have a quick question or clarification. What meeting are we supposed to change?
Jamie, I believe Paul is requesting that the TAC meeting in August, that we change the date. It is currently scheduled for the Monday, the 2nd of August, and Paul has requested that we shift it to Monday, the 9th of August, due to the fact that he is scheduled to be away on that day. So I think,
Yeah,
Mr. Chair.
Yeah, I'll just defer to the chair, but Paul, can you have your alternate attend just in case others of us have conflicts on that 3rd Monday? Because I think somebody's always going to have a vacation, unfortunately. So I would recommend that we try to keep the dates that are on the calendar, especially since the public is already. But that's just
So Jamie, basically, if we hold that date, basically, I'm supposed to chair that meeting. I guess if it's that date, you'll probably have to chair the meeting.
if I'm the alternate or Bassam is the alternate for the city, then I mean, I don't have any issue with that. I just probably don't want us to get in the habit of changing the meeting. Or you can have your alternate chair the meeting, right? But I'll defer to everyone else. Y'all's calendars may work for the thing, so I'll defer.
Alex, I'm assuming as the chair, you should chair the
I
process.
don't really have a conflict with either date. I guess I'll kind of throw it out to the group back to see if anyone has really any major heartburn with postponing our August 2nd date to August 9th.
As a staff, we don't have a major problem. It just does mean that in a short space of time, we got to get the packets out for the TAC, the policy committee, and I think is the green one the CTAC date.
Yeah, that's
So
CTAC.
it just gives us a big workload in 1 week, but I mean it's not impossible to do.
All right, and Paul, would it be possible for your alternate to attend in your place and chair the meeting?
So I think, I guess someone would have to look at the bylaws, but I'm not sure, like if Rodney kind of attends, I'm not sure if Rodney can chair.
Yeah, I
Would
would
be Jamie.
assume the vice chair would stand in for the chair for that one meeting.
Yeah, which goes back to what I'm saying, that Jamie would chair the meeting.
Okay, so does Jamie have a problem chairing the meeting on August the 2nd?
This is Jamie. I would have Bassam because he is my co-member from the city, and he was actually part of TAC before I was, so he would be the chair.
So I don't think Bassam could do it. Then it would revert to Alex would chair the meeting on August the 2nd.
So Bassam can do it.
But yeah, I think the bylaws, I think it has to be the chair, vice chair, or second vice chair.
So
Yeah,
yes, either myself or Bassam will be in attendance and could be the chair of the meeting.
Jamie, just to clarify, I think that Paul is right. One of the elected chairs has to chair the meeting, not an alternate. There are no alternate chairs. There are alternate members, but not alternate chairs.
Right, I'm fine with that.
All right, I guess let's go ahead and we'll keep it on for August 2nd. I imagine we'll probably have a light agenda anyhow that date.
That's very likely, yeah. All right, so I think if there are no more questions for me, I think, Mr. Chair, I'll hand it back to you for the election of the officers item.
All right, I'm not really sure what formal action we need to take since it's kind of prescribed about how the chair, vice chair, and second chair kind of goes in the rotation here. So I guess I'll just make a motion to go ahead and approve the positions for FY22 as listed here on the slides.
Mr. Chair, I think do we not have to name the people, because it's not the chair doesn't go. A jurisdiction may nominate a person, but it's not a jurisdiction that gets elected. It's a person that gets elected. So I think we should just name the individuals and agree to those names.
All right, then I would request Spotsylvania, who are you proposing as chair position for FY22?
Good morning, Alex. It would be myself, Paul and Yoa.
Okay. And Fredericksburg, who would you proposing for the vice chair position?
As of right now, I'll propose myself until the city manager tells me otherwise, so Jamie Jackson.
All right, and for second vice chair, I think for right now, I would probably hold that position for Stafford County. So I'll go ahead and make a motion for starting in our August for fiscal year 22. We'd have Paul Agnello as our chair, Jamie Jackson as vice chair, and then myself, Alex Oziak, as second vice chair.
Second.
All right, any further discussion? All right, hearing none, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion passes and officers are elected.
Congratulations to all those who were elected. Thank you very much.
All right, now I'll move us on to our next item, number 8, for correspondence.
Mr. Chair, I'm not aware of correspondence that we've received apart from those items that we've just dealt with above. So obviously there was correspondence in regard each of those items, but we don't repeat them here. I'd just like to say that as a staff, as the head of staff at FAMPA, I'd like to thank and congratulate the outgoing chairman, Alex Wiziak, for the work that he's done. I've certainly enjoyed working with him as chair, and I've also enjoyed working with the vice chairs. So thank you to chairman and your deputies for the sterling work over the sometimes difficult year, I believe, before my time. But we've certainly got a lot of work done since I've been here. And just to thank all of you for everything that you've done, I certainly appreciate it.
All right, thanks, Ian. Are there any reports from members?
Alex, hey, this is Jason. Just wanted to, this will be actually my last TAC meeting. I think some of you all know, but maybe a few of you all don't, but I'm heading out of Stafford County at the end of the month of June. And since you all won't be meeting again till August, this will be my last TAC meeting. And I just wanted to express my appreciation and gratitude for the opportunity to work with everybody here on a lot of different things over the past couple of years. As previously mentioned, it's been up and down at times, but I've just been grateful for the partnerships and the teamwork here. So hopefully I look forward to seeing you all around different things. I'm heading back to the private sector, so maybe I'll have some opportunities to work with some of y'all. Thanks.
Hey, this is Paul. I just wanted to say that we're going to miss you, Jason. We've enjoyed working with you, and we wish you well in the future. I also just wanted to ask a quick question. The follow-up meeting to this on the VRE transit and bike ped, are we going to just kind of transition right into that, or will we have a small break before that starts?
Paul, this is Ian. I am planning to use the same GoToMeeting facility. So when Alex adjourns the meeting, if those who are staying for the VRE meeting, if you could please just stay on this GoToMeeting. If members want a comfort break, I'm happy to give 1 minute comfort break or something. But if we could just stay on this meeting so that we don't have to go and find software again and all that when we start the second meeting.
Sounds good.
All right, if there's no more reports from members, I'd like to go ahead and make a motion to adjourn today's meeting.
Second.
All right, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, that concludes today's meeting, and we'll see everyone again on August 2nd.
Thanks very much, Dara, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.